I know you mentioned when we were talking about Tibet that when people have a cause, they tend to then align with like a party. And it's a slippery slope. And I'm wondering how you see that applying to like the medical freedom movement we've got going here.
Well, I think that human beings are human beings are complex. And personally, I am a big enemy of all dogma. And that's regardless whether I agree with the talking points of the dogma or disagree with the talking points of the dogma. I think the dogmatic approach is poison just
Yeah.
in itself as a genre. So so it saddens me every time when people get attached to dogma. And a lot of that is happening, of course, in the medical freedom movement. And who knows, some of it might be very much helped. So, and it's just bad habits can be exploited, but I think a lot of that is going on. So
Yeah.
people naturally have good habits and bad habits, and then with some help, bad habits can be exploited and go much stronger than they would have otherwise. But that's why it's important to not be attached to talking points. Like, for example, just this morning, and I'm going to probably write something about it. Invisible Rainbow, the book, right?
Yep.
So it's an iconic book, and it talks about electromagnetic, like electric currents, electromagnetic pollution. So the author of this book sent out this newsletter this morning.
Is this Furstenberg?
Uh,
Is it Furstenberg?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
He sent a newsletter saying that geoengineering is a hoax, that chemtrails don't exist. So I think he sincerely believes in it. And that's amazing. Like, to me, it's just a fascinating example of human cognitive, and because scientists and conspiracy theorists and researchers sometimes disagree. So somebody might say, oh, he's controlled opposition or whatever. And anybody could be theoretically, right? But practically, I think that that's just his belief.
Yeah.
I personally think that geoengineering is very real, and I have my arguments about that. However, for example, if I were given irrefutable proof that there's another explanation, like irrefutable, I would change my mind. I'm not attached to this idea or that idea. But that just shows us that it's fascinating how, and that's the normal states of human relations and science and honest intellectual explorations. People can drastically disagree. But it's funny because it's one crazy conspiracy theorist debunking the other, almost like that, right? So a person who says that even Spanish flu was likely caused by like power lines and electricity is saying that chemtrails are not real. It's funny. The way I find to look at it, it's just awe of human intellect without getting like heartbroken or all worked up. Oh, how could you? That's so. He is allowed to think that. I'm allowed to agree or disagree. People can say, oh no, this is like you're wrong, and then no, you're wrong. That's valid. So getting into camps now or writing him off completely from his work or anything like that, I don't think it's healthy. A lot of people go this route immediately. And so they agree with you. You say one thing, you step on one talking point that goes against their beliefs, and then they get all triggered.
Yeah,
that's an unhealthy reaction. And I try to talk. So going back to your point, the dogma is very, very poisonous.
Yeah. Furstenberg lives here, and I've been to some gatherings and meetings with him, and I do not think he's controlled opposition at all.
Me neither. Yeah.
I think he's like single-mindedly focused on the EMFs and that whole thing, and maybe isn't as up to speed on some other things. And I admire your ability to pivot, to hold paradox, to be tolerant of other people's perspectives. I do get really concerned about the health freedom community, because right now it just seems like the people leading it are all very attached to the problem that there's a lot of like boundaries around questioning if there's a problem. I'm thinking virus, no virus, and how so many of those people leading that conversation are creating vaccines and are invested in the techno-fascist enslavement future. And I'm like, aren't these conflicts of interest raising any eyebrows for anyone in this movement, but it seems like there's this like homogenization of thought where it's like, well, we can't let in any information that would endanger the movement, even though we're giving our allegiance to people who don't actually seem to have our best interests in mind.
Well, I try to approach it philosophically. I think for one, it's good to not have idols, period.
Yes.
And I think actually that while without a doubt there's a gazillion of infiltrators with different techniques, different personalities, different roles, different fake personas, I'm sure, I mean, like, that's inevitable. That's how life works. At the same time, I think that a lot of the people who are getting yelled at for being controlled opposition are probably just imperfect human beings. Some of them might be, but I think some of them might just have big egos or whatever, or somebody might be messing with them to help their big egos get more foolish. And I think it's no different. And that was my personal revelation, actually, relatively recently, because, and like a big one, because previously, you know, when it all started, 2020, we were few and it was lonely and people were really sticking together and almost like left, right, conservative, democratic, like formally, right? I mean, like, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And people really didn't care. At least that was my experience.
Right.
People were just so happy to see somebody not wearing a mask or, you know, talking sense. Every sensible person was precious. And
Yep.
then I thought, like, this time in history, we're going to do it. Because like previously, maybe it wasn't massive enough or wasn't whatever. So, but this time it's so obvious, it's so egregious, the scam, the abuse, like everybody's going to see that we're going to do it this time. Like everybody's going to wake up. Not many are going to wake up. And then it didn't happen. And as time went by, people got back to, it's very hard to be strung up for a long time, right? So people kind of got back into their routine and their normal groove. And yes, the freedoms are being taken away significantly, but gradually, kind of like slowly, then suddenly, then more. But people are still, you know, eating and traveling and making money. So it's not like everybody's in a camp, right? Well, Australia had camps, but not in the States.
Hey, superstars, thank you so much for sharing your sacred attention with me. If you are receiving any value whatsoever from my videos, I'm encouraging you to give back, to pay it forward by supporting me on my Patreon community, on my locals community, on both. Your support allows me to keep on keeping on and to keep making content like this. It used to be much easier back in the days of a free press, but now, given all of the censorship and the shadow banning, it really is challenging for content creators to continue to put out so much work. I'll just speak for myself. I'm excited for it to be easier for me to continue to put out more content. And the primary way that it can be easier is by you supporting me financially by way of my Patreon and or my locals, where for as little as $5 a month, you get to be my hero and receive oodles of bonus content, and we both get to win. Okay, thank you so much for your support, for your attention, and for being omniscopic amazingness.